One of our panelists is actually going to be joining us in progress. Kirsten Brennigan, she'll be here by about 6:45. But I would like to thank you all for coming tonight. It means so much to me and Miranda and the entire Women's Activism Club that you've all shown your support tonight. This is the first and hopefully annual Women's Work Career Panel. So thank you all for coming. I'm Maggie McCreesh. I'm the president of the Women's Activism Club, and this panel has been sort of a dream of mine for the past 2 years, and I'm really glad we could get it off the ground. And I'd specifically like to thank Mr. Williams, Mr. Matari, and Mrs. DeBoer, our principals and vice principals, for sort of greenlighting this and getting it off the ground. So tonight, the goal of tonight is to celebrate and empower the women who have really made themselves prevalent in traditionally male-dominated careers, as well as sort of creating career paths of their own. And again, we want to thank you, and I'm going to hand it over to Miranda Madrazo, who is going to give us a quick rundown of the night. So thank you.
So each of the panelists will begin by speaking at the podium for a few minutes about their respective careers, and afterwards we will open the floor up to any questions for the panelists. Now I would like to introduce Dr. Julie Glazer, Superintendent of Public Schools.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Women's Working Career Panel. Thanks, ladies. You're doing an awesome job organizing so far. And thank you all for coming to tonight's event. The Women's Activism Club organized something that is really special. And if you look around, I have to say I'm glad to see some men in the room, because even though we are empowering each other, I will tell you that you can also learn from men in your lives as well. I've been very blessed in my career with mentors who have helped me when I've been faced with new phases of my career life that required the development of new knowledge or skills, attitude, and I've always been a person who's open to the mentoring moments and have been grateful for the opportunities that those people have given me, really to create myself. Whether I work with them for a semester in school or have maintained a connection over a period of years, the relationships have been life and career changing for me. And I know it's hard sometimes to be open-minded when another person has something to offer to you. My mentors really helped me to determine who I wanted to become, how I needed to change in order to accomplish my goals, and really how I could take advantage of my college work and volunteer experiences to achieve my own vision. There are always people cheering me on, and some of those people are still the ones that I turn to and who continue to help show me the way. Education and being a superintendent of schools, which, just so you know, in New Jersey there are 624 districts and only less than 5% of the leaders are women. Is my second career. Out of college, I had another career in a male-dominated space. I worked for CBS Sports at the time of Jimmy the Greek and Dan Deerdorf. If you are too young to know about those times in football, I encourage you to Google it. There were not women, and you had to develop a pretty tough skin right then and there. I, from there, went on to become a film and video producer director. I did get a Master of Fine Arts in film before I became the president of my own company, and did documentary educational and public service programming for 11 years. And I loved that. I would tell you that that work, again, shaped even what I'm doing yet today. And the people that I did that work with all of those years ago, and believe me, at this point it's been 21 years, and I know that because I switched careers when I got pregnant with my first son, and he's turning 21 next month. When I did that, my husband and I kind of flipped a coin, and said, okay, which one of us is going to work for benefits and work full-time and take care of the kids and actually be home? He had a degree in physics and was also working in film, so it was me. And I went back for my master's in education and began again as a 5th grade teacher. And I loved being a 5th grade teacher. I loved being in the classroom. And again, was very fortunate to have mentors, a principal, an assistant superintendent for curriculum and instruction that saw my previous experience and said, you know what, you are an awesome teacher, but you can do more. And they built benches in the back of my classroom and taught me how to have what's called the transparent classroom, where people came in and watched me teach. And I became a nationally board certified teacher. Again, one of the 5% in the United States that are nationally board certified. A lot of opportunities that I've had, and I will tell you, not only am I grateful, but I never forget for a minute that no one learns in a vacuum. You have to sponge up all the wisdom of other people, like the diverse group of panelists that we have tonight, and then you get to say, when the time is right, you have to pay it forward by being a mentor yourself. You have to set yourself apart and be willing to do that for somebody else. I hope that you see in me, those of you that know me and those of you who are just meeting me, that I strive to be that coach and mentor myself every day. I hope I'm living up to the example that others set for me and showed me that it didn't matter if you were starting over, if you were starting the first time or the second time, or changing directions, that there would always be people to guide you and to cheer you on. And we are your first group that's here to do that for you. And I hope that you will remember our names and reach out, whether you're still here at Nutley High School, whether you're in college after you graduate looking for your first positions. We're still here. We'll still be those people cheering you on and wishing you all of the very best, always.
Thank you, Dr. Blazer. I'd like to introduce our first panelist for the night, Samantha Scuddy.
I get nervous with these things because I'm so short. Can you hear me? Okay. First, I just want to thank the Women's Activism Club for asking me to be here. It's a great honor, and it's also an honor to be on a panel with such amazing women. I'm still really young, so I feel like I don't consider myself a woman, but I guess I am. So pretty much I graduated from NHS in 2011. I went to the College of New Jersey right after, and I got my Bachelor in Mechanical Engineering there. After that, I am currently a mechanical engineer for the Department of Defense. I work for the Army, so I do the Army technologies, which I'll get into a little later. First, I just want to talk about what inspired me to get into engineering. I really liked critical thinking. I saw my dad come home every day and kind of talk about what he did that day and fixing problems, and he rebuilt my whole house. So being really hands-on and doing tools and things like that, I saw that every day. And I kind of wanted a career that was interesting every day. I didn't want to do the same thing over and over, or something that didn't really have that much passion. I wanted to always try and, think of something new. And, being kind of good at math helped too. So I went into engineering at TCNJ. I just want to say, when I was at TCNJ, I did a lot. I was in a sorority. I did intramural softball. I wasn't varsity softball because I wasn't great, but intramurals is fun. I also, did bowling. I went out with my friends. Engineering wasn't the only thing that I did. It was just, my career. So during engineering school, I competed in the Baja contest. For those who do not know, it's a kind of dune buggy that you build from scratch. So I learned how to pretty much build a car from scratch, cut metal, weld, in the machine shop, really hands-on. And that's really what got me my job. I competed all 4 years. I traveled around the country. I competed against different countries. I went against Brazil, India, you name it. I have friends around the world. And those are the type of things that, people don't really see in engineering. They see a lot of math and a lot of classes, but there's things that I took from that ultimately landed me my job. That's the reason that I have my job, is they saw that I built a car and they were like, all right, you're hired. So what I do, it's pretty boring name, but I'm a structural analysis using computational methods to fix things. So in normal terms, I take tanks, missiles, guns, things that the Army uses, and I put them in the computer. I use math to see if they're going to survive or not. So before you spend millions of dollars to build a tank, let's see in the computer if it works first. So that's pretty much what I do. I use math every day. Not only do I use my computer every day to do the math, but I also am 3D printing. So all the technologies that the Army does, I kind of 3D print. So 3D printing, if you don't know, melts up any material. So schools have plastic, but in the Army we use titanium, aluminum, and steel. So we're 3D printing in a lot of materials that you wouldn't necessarily think about. So what I do and being a woman in engineering, it is hard sometimes. There's only 5% of women in the field, and don't quote me on this, but probably half of them are managers. Scientists really need the mom role. So a lot of women get pushed into that babysitting role. A lot of women aren't necessarily taken for being technical and only technical. And that's what I'm doing, and that's what I plan to do. So I've been, actually this is more intimidating than talking in front of 200 males, but I've been in a lot of meetings where I'm the only girl, there's 300 men. I mean, I work in the Army, so a lot of men are either were in the Army or currently are in the Army, so they're kind of intimidating already, and then being the only female. But it's a rewarding experience, and I just want to end with when I finished college, I walked out of my last class and I cried in my car because I was so proud of myself. And I feel like whatever you do, you should be proud of yourself. Don't do something that's easy and just getting a degree. You should do something that you're passionate about. So, okay, yeah.
Thank you so much, Sam. I would like to introduce now Judge Joanne Cacciola.
I'm going to be boring compared to that, because I've been riding bugs all over the world. We're not leaving all of it. Thank you, Maggie, Miranda, and the Activism Club. This is something that I used to do when I was the mayor, and that is no longer done. And I'm really happy to hear that you're going to do this on an annual basis. There is nothing more meaningful, and it's a wonderful thing for women to listen to other women and their stories. I'm really happy to be here, and I'm happy that this is going to go on and on year after year. So thank you for the invitation to be here. I think that the way that I can best describe how my career path and where I landed and why I'm here is to explain to everybody what my life was like growing up and what my thought process was along the way. I'm a Nutley girl through and through. I left only to go to college. I went to graduate school, Nutley, John Walker Middle School, and here in this high school, and I spent, I can tell you to the young people in the room, one thing I have to tell you is you can never anticipate the things that are going to come your way and what life is going to do and the twists and turns that are going to occur. Because when I was in this high school, there was not a moment that I ever imagined that I would be here today, where I am, or what my life would be like now. So it is, life is very interesting and where it takes you and the twists and turns of life. So as a young girl, my mom worked. She was a working mom, but back when I was young, there were no working moms. Everybody went home at lunch to their stay-at-home mom. But my mom was a working mom, and every morning she got up early. I'm going to be a long member, by the way. Every morning she got up early. She put her makeup on. She went to work, whether she was sick or whether it didn't matter. She was at work and she was punctual. And real lesson. I mean, that I have never been late to anything in my entire life. I'm a really hard worker. And I got all of that from my mom. My dad was a public servant all my life. Before me, he was, I guess I was about 11 or 12 when he was elected to the Nutley Board of Education. He served some terms on the Board of Education and then spent 28 years as an elected commissioner in Nutley, most of the time as director of Parks and Public Property. In my house, I was the youngest of three older brothers. So I had a working mom, three older brothers, my dad, my grandfather, my uncle who was divorced, and his son, always in my home. I grew up in a male-dominated home. I had to eat with them, I had to watch TV with them. My dad was my best friend, he was my mentor, he took me everywhere with him. I was at Elks Club on Friday nights, we hung together. And so my whole life was, as a young girl, was dominated by men. I am very thankful for that, to be honest, because I have never walked into a room full of men and felt uncomfortable. Not once, not as a young girl, not as an older woman. It taught me to not, my parents made me feel like I was equal to them from day one. So there was never a disparity between male and female in my house. There was never a disparity between black and white in my house. There was never, in the way I grew up, it was very naive, I guess, because everybody was equal. There was no man better than me, there was no person better than me, I was no better than anybody else. So that way of being raised shaped my entire life and the way I think. Even today, as an older woman, I sometimes don't understand some of the challenging behavior that I see out there because I don't feel it inside. I don't feel like I'm any different from anyone else or they're any different from me. So I am thankful for having been raised in a home like that because I think it is part of what brought me to where I am today in a lot of ways. I left Nutley High School, I went to Douglas College, Women's College. And while I was there, that's where my whole life sort of changed. I thought I was going to be an English teacher. I changed gears on the political side of how I was raised. Came out, I ran for junior class president. I was my junior class president, my senior class president. So all of that started in me. There was a sense of empowerment. I would recommend going to school to anybody. It was a fabulous experience for me to be in that school. I don't know that I would have ran for office in my school if I was in co-ed school, but I did it and I was happy and I was very proud of my accomplishments. Went to Seton Hall Law School and got out and started in the Attorney General's office. I was the Deputy Attorney General in Trenton, and that's where I started in casino regulation. I was there for 15 years. During those 15 years, I married and I had 2 children who came with me to Trenton every day. I actually divorced and I brought those 2 children, 2 babies with me every day to Trenton, from Nutley to Trenton. There was a daycare in my building. They stayed there all day. I brought them to daycare in the morning and home with me at night every day until they were school age and they came back. They were in Nutley. I was still in Trenton. So they were up here. They got a little older. I eventually left the AG's office. What I did was I worked hard. I started at the bottom, and I ended up becoming like 3rd in charge in my agency. When I got up that far, it was politics gets involved, directors change. I left, and I became associate counsel, in-house counsel at the Sports and Exposition Authority of the Meadowlands in East Rutherford. When you work for the Attorney General's office, you were not allowed to be politically involved in anything. So it kind of stifled where I was going in my life, with my dad and his leadership. But I also had 2 little children, so I backed away from everything, took care of my children. I was a single mom, had to do all that by myself. I was a couple not so good years in there where really, to be honest, had almost nothing. If I didn't have my family, I never would have made it through those years. But I turned it all around. When I worked at the Sports and Exposition Authority, my father decided, this is 1999 now, my father decided that he no longer wanted to run for elected office. He was going to retire. And I had a friend who was a mentor come to me and say, this is probably a good opportunity for you. You have the credentials, everyone knows your need. You should probably think about running for office in this town. There's never been a woman, and go for it. It might be a challenge, but go for it. And I knew right then, it took me 2 seconds, as soon as this person said this to me, to decide that's what I was doing. I had it in my blood, I couldn't wait. But I said, let me think about it. I tried to echo, let me think about it, and I'll get back to you. And I knew immediately that that is what I was going to do. It was a challenge, I was really up for that challenge. And we ran a campaign, and I won. I was the first woman ever elected to the Board of Commissioners of the Township of Nutley. The way the township, the way it works is your 5 people are elected, and the order you're elected in is actually becomes important. Number 1 becomes the mayor, 2, 3, 4, 5. I was 5, so I was elected at the bottom, but I got there, and that's all I cared about. I was in. And when I took office, I decided that I wanted to. I went to the mayor and I said, give me the Department of Public Affairs, which at the time was health and sanitation. Nobody wanted it. Yeah, everybody wanted public safety, always public works, and the bigger departments that have a lot of employees. This was a smaller department. I took it, and I decided as I walked in the door, and I said to the staff, I am changing everything that happens here. It's going to be about people of Nutley. It's going to be about me and how I would like to see, what I would like to see for Nutley. And that is exactly what I did. I had a very small staff of women that worked for me. Everyone was a mom. Everyone had small children. Maggie McCreesh was this big. She was in my office watching cartoons. and her mom's, right before I actually hired Mom McCreesh to work for me, we started to change everything. I started a bunch of new programs, the CHAMP program, which is a high school mentoring program, students mentoring students, the CARE program, which was for helping people in the community. But my favorite was the Women's Initiative of Nutley, which we put together women who were interested in helping other women. And we did this. We did it on a large scale. We did it in the schools. We went to the schools. We introduced young children to different types of careers, just all different types of programs developed for women. Other ones as well. So in those years, I think I might have got remarried at that point in time, while I was a commissioner. Anyway, we all ran for re-election, and I became the top vote-getter. So I went from number 5 to number 1. And my head was spinning that night. I was really, you cannot imagine what that night was like. It was the most exciting night of my entire life. And I became the mayor. So, with that, we introduced more programs to the community with the help of Mom McCreesh, Mayor's Wellness Program, all kinds of really fun and exciting things that you don't really need to make government work, but we did make Nutley a fun place. Continued all these programs with a very small staff of women. I think we had 6 or 7 women. It was maybe 6 or 7 of us running the mayor's office, running a department, running all these programs. They were night programs, they were day programs, they were all the time. And I respected the fact that we were all working mothers. I had a baby during that, all these things coming to my mind. When I was the mayor, in my first mayoral term, I had Eva. I was 46 years old. I pushed the envelope as far as I could go. I was very persistent with that. I wanted a child, and I ended up having a child. So I was working full-time. I had a child. I was the mayor. I was the director of public affairs. We were, if you excuse my language, I'm sorry, small group of women, we kicked ass and nothing. We just brought so much to this community. It was fabulous. And we were so energetic, and we had so much fun doing it. It was really, if you asked any one of us that worked in that office, we would probably say that those were probably our best years, working for this community and really doing great things that we did. So now it becomes a little more boring. The next election, I ran for re-election. I got re-elected again as the mayor. I was the 3rd mayor in the history of Nutley ever to be re-elected in their current term. So it was a wonderful feeling. It was fabulous again. We kept doing everything that we were going to do. We had vision. We just kept working hard. That was all what it was about. We just kept bringing things to the community. If you came to me and told me if you would like to see something in Nutley, I did it. And that's basically how we we operated. But right before that term was to end, I got a call from the current judge, then Judge Mike Viola, telling me that he was going to retire. And that's a very big appointment for a mayor to make. The next is the municipal court judge. And each of the things that have happened to me in my life, they kind of just have fallen into my lap. And even though I work hard, things happen, and that was happening, and I had that feeling like it's time to go. Sometimes you got to go when you're at the top, and it's better. But while you're ahead, a lot of things went through my mind. I wasn't really sure, but I thought about it, and I thought, this is an opportunity that's not going to arise for me. That's another thing for the young people. When opportunity comes, you got to take it while it's there. So I thought about it. I'm a lawyer. I had never really been in private practice. It was something that was a little foreign to me. But I thought that was probably the best thing for me to do at that point in time. I felt like I could keep going and going and doing more, but I had done a lot. It was time to go. So I spoke to the Board of Commissioners. It was their appointment then to appoint me to that position, and I stepped down in early 2012, I guess that was. And since then, I have been a municipal court judge. That was a challenge for me. I never practiced law, and I didn't have a private practice, so I had to really put all of my energy into making sure that I knew everything about the job, that I was comfortable. And I was a little bit, I wasn't comfortable at first, but I can tell you now that it's been, I guess, 4 years, maybe 5. It is a wonderful place to be for me in my life. I have done a whole lot of other things community service-wise, but to be the municipal judge in the community where you grew up and then love is just, it's a wonderful thing. I can no longer, I'm not in a position where I can help people anymore. That's the problem with when you're the municipal judge. I'm actually imposing sanctions and penalties on people. However, things happen sometimes where I have the ability to try to help people in different ways, and I am a compassionate judge, I'm a fair judge, and I really am enjoying where I am at this point in my life. My daughter's getting a little bit bigger, my older daughter is getting married, my children are older now. It's really a good place to be. But the point is, life twists and turns, and opportunities come and go. You have to seize the opportunity when it's there, and you go with it. And I have had ups and downs in my life. I've had periods of time where I've had nothing, which is why in my life I will help anybody who needs help at any point in time. Anybody who's down and out, I'll be there for them. People were there for me, brought me up. I'm in a whole different place in my life right now, and it feels really good. So thank you very much.
I would like to now introduce Wendy Rio.
Hi everyone, thank you. I'm Wendy. I am co-owner of CrossFit Nutley, right here in town. I too am a Nutley girl. I grew up here, my parents grew up here. I graduated high school in 1991. If any of my old teachers are in the audience, they'd be really surprised to see me speaking on this women's panel right now. I was an average student. I had no idea what I wanted to be as far as a professional career. What I did have was a dream of becoming a professional dancer and an entertainer. I did do that successfully for a few years after high school, but at the ripe old age of 21 years old, I realized that maybe, even though I was really good at what I did, I didn't quite have the caliber and skill that it would take to have a lifetime career in entertainment. So, like Bette Midler, someone who's still on Broadway in their, later years. That was not going to be me. And I kind of panicked, because really all I knew how to do was dance and entertain and sing, and lucky for me, I do still do that as a hobby in my life. So, you can still do those things, but as Joanne was saying, their life will give you lots of twists and turns. And if you did read my bio, you'll see that I don't have a direct career path, not in any way, shape, or form. in that time that I realized I needed this shift in my life, that I was going to have to go out and find what everyone in my life at the time called a real job. I had no idea where to begin. And I was thinking back while I was preparing for this about some of the women that had an impact on my life. One was my grandmother. She lived in Nutley the majority of her life, and she was a working woman, something very unusual when I was younger. She worked right on Franklin Ave in an office. She had a giant typewriter, like the size of this podium. You guys don't even know what typewriters are. And she's a bang on it, and it took her whole body weight to move the carriage over. I used to watch and stare at her and think, man, this is so strange. My mom stayed at home, and I said, Grandma, why do you have to work? And she said, oh, I don't have to work. I choose to work. And I never really understood that until I became an adult. Well, what she said to me when I was in a state of panic, because I had no experience, she said, you don't really need experience to have a job. You need confidence, and you need the willingness to learn something new. And that really, it made sense to me. She also told me that if I found something that I loved doing, that I'd never feel like I was working a day in my life. And that also was something very interesting to me, and nothing that I really understood at first when it was being said. Another person that had an impact on me was a neighbor right in my neighborhood. A very unexpected turn came in her life, and she went through a very complicated divorce, and it kind of blindsided her. She was a stay-at-home mom, just like my mom was, and this divorce left her financially paralyzed and functionally paralyzed. And it was a real eye-opener to me. And as a young woman, I was like, wow, how could... It was shocking that a woman could just be left with nowhere to go, nothing to do. She didn't know how to maintain her home or her property. She couldn't pay her bills. It changed her entire life. She had to move out of her house. It was really so different than anything I knew growing up. At that moment, I realized that I would make financial independence and functional independence a priority in my life. I still strongly believe, until every young and old woman that I meet, that it should be your priority in your life. To protect yourself and be able to take care of yourself is a huge, huge thing for women. The last person that had a really big impact on my life at that time, again, the late old age of 21, which feels like yesterday, was an author, Shakti Going. A friend of mine who I was on a dance tour with knew that I was going through this struggle, and she said, why don't you read this book? It might just kind of put some things in perspective. She wrote a book called Creative Visualization. And I showed my mom, she's like, oh, it's hippie stuff. And I said, maybe it is, but whatever. It kind of opened my mind to a new way of thinking. It made me really realize that having a positive attitude and a positive outlook just in day-to-day life can really shape and change just the way that just your day goes, never mind your whole life and career. So that really made a difference for me. One of the exercises in that book was to write down some goals. And one of the goals, part of that exercise was I wrote down what my dream job would be. And my dream job was to travel the world and teach people, men and women of all ages, to live healthy lifestyles through creative movement and dance. And 26 years later, my job in CrossFit is actually not that different from that. I inspire people every day and teach people how to live healthy lifestyles through functional movement. So we're not dancing at CrossFit, but I throw some stuff in there. So I went on to search for my new career, and I simply just picked something that interested me. When I was dancing, I had a part-time job as a hostess in a restaurant, and I thought that was a really fun environment. It was social. I got to meet all kinds of people. I really learned so much just about people. It was more like a social experiment to me, being in that environment. I went on some interviews, and I had lots of confidence, and I would just walk in and say, I want to work here. And they said, you don't have experience. I said, I don't care. I said, I want to work here. And I would get an entry-level position, hostessing. And I would take opportunities as they crossed my path, similar to what these women said. You always take an opportunity when it is presented to you. Eventually I become an assistant manager, and then a manager, and a regional manager. Before I knew it, I was running a business, and how did I get here, right? But it was because I took time to learn, and I always say, I hate to use the phrase, fake it till you make it, because those people are not really faking it. They are busting their butts, learning the ins and outs of these different businesses, trying to prove themselves in their positions to make advancements and get themselves better. And that is really what I did in that industry. From there, I changed my job and I went on to commercial real estate and building management. The restaurant industry just became very overwhelming about those twists and turns in life. You decide you don't leave a job just because you don't like it all the time. It's just life events and different things that happen will maybe point your career in a new direction, or you find an opportunity somewhere else, or you find a new passion that might just steer your vision somewhere else. This time, I was just kind of looking for something different, something less demanding of my time. Restaurant business, lots of overnight work and weekends all the time. So I just wanted to find something with a little more structure. I took a job as a concierge in a building in Manhattan. I was terrified to go in and out of New York every single day as a commuter. I went for years, since I'm 14. My mother's like, take the bus and go on that audition. Just go to dance class. I had no problem, because I was going to do something that was familiar to me. When I started working in the building, I simply stood at a podium just like this. It's nice and comfortable, actually. Yes, 42nd floor, 35th floor. The bathroom's this way, the elevators are that way. I was like, oh, it was fun. But I started to learn how a building in Manhattan operates. I had no idea. You just take for granted those things are up there. But there are mechanical engineers in these buildings, structural engineers in these buildings, hundreds of employees that just operate the building, let alone all the offices and the different careers and things that are happening within it. Different opportunities were presented to me in that job. I had an opportunity to move from concierge to an assistant building manager. And I really, really learned so much about business and the operations and how a building works. I spent about 4.5 years there, and eventually I became the property director of a 40-story building in Manhattan, 777's 3rd Avenue. Commercial real estate is a very male-dominated career, and I was 25 years old with a bunch, my peers were men in their 50s and 60s, and it was a challenge sometimes to earn their respect, but after a while you do it. What I did find sometimes when you're in a male-dominated field and you're only working with a few other women, a lot of your challenges will come from the other women, kind of vying for the same position, vying for the next advancement. And it's a shame sometimes to see that women don't always rally together. Like we're all here today for the same cause and to inspire. And you should learn from those things and not fight against them. So when you do come across challenges with other women, which was a surprise to me at first, is learn from it. Don't fight back. Step back, and always take the higher ground when those types of things happen. I left that not because it was a very challenging job, but it also became very demanding of my life. And more technology that's old, but I had a pager and I had a phone and I had beepers and a ring of keys this big, and I was getting calls at 3 in the morning because the security guard locked his key wherever. Things that it became overwhelming, where it started to affect my health. And while I was in that job, the stress became just a little more than I had hoped for in such a career that I viewed as so glamorous. I chose to leave that career and with nowhere to go. So I kind of just took a leap of faith and I said, my health is more important to me. Money should not be my driving force to stay in a position that is not exactly the best for me right now. And I took a leap of faith, and with the help of an employment agency, it was actually called Women in Business, just seemed fitting for me. I found a job at Bank of America, before it was Bank of America Merrill Lynch. And again, in an entry-level position. working as a receptionist, buzzing the important people through the door. And it was just my way into something new again. I was just brave enough to take a leap. It was for a quarter of the salary that I was making, but at the time I thought to myself, I realized money was not making me happy. I was living to work instead of working to live. And this job that I found was, again, it felt like, oh, I probably shouldn't have done this to myself. I had a very promising career. But I said, oh, maybe something great will come of it. And I had faith, and I stuck around, and as opportunities presented themselves to me again, I took them. I ended up becoming an administrative assistant in the media and telecom group for investment bankers in Bank of America. And I started with 1 or 2 bankers, and I just sort of proved myself and how efficient and good at this job I could be. I eventually became the executive head assistant for banking in that department, which just meant I had to manage a whole lot of really wealthy people. My point about all this is you don't have to know exactly who you're going to be or what you're going to do or where you're going to go. If those of you who keep hearing, you need to know where you're going to college, you need to know what your major is going to be, you have to know what you have to do. You're going to go to college and you're going to get a job. You don't have to know exactly what your major is going to be or where that's going to be or what it's going to be or how you're going to do it. You kind of just have to have faith that it's going to happen. There's something to be said for that creative visualization. I mean, I made that statement at 21 years old, and I'm 43 now, and I'm doing almost exactly what I had thought my dream job would be. And I really never imagined that to be a real thing. It was a fantasy. About 9 years ago, I'm going to tell you how I got into CrossFit now. I discovered CrossFit. It's just simply someone said, hey, you're going to try this new workout. You're going to really like it. And I did. I loved it. I loved the methodology. I loved the challenging nature of it. The culture and the community aspect was outrageous, like nothing I've ever experienced before. I hadn't been that fired up over anything since I left dancing. And while I was still working in the city, I started to, I guess, what I like to call my corporate escape. I started to plan my corporate escape. And I thought to myself that someday I'd like to, be a coach at a CrossFit gym. And that's really how I just had it in my head. While I was in the city, I spent 2 years planning. I took classes, I got certified, I just kept learning and learning. And I also kept true to myself that my financial independence would be important. Now I am married, but I've always kept, it's not exactly traditional, but learning those lessons from the, seeing tragic things happen to women in my life. I've always kept my own funds. So I have mine, he has his, and we have our joint account that runs our household. I think it's just something to consider and something that's important. I spent my 2 years planning and saving for financial stability before I decided to just leap out of another career that was making me tons of money and start from square one again. I saved enough money to pay my portion of the bills for about 7 or 8 months, and I had enough money saved that if I didn't have any income, I'd be okay. After 2 years, I reached my goal, and I just jumped ship. I said, that's it, I'm doing it. I went back to square one, and I took a job at my friend's restaurant, waiting tables. It was, a lot of fun, actually, when you're not waiting tables to pay off college debt. But you learn a lot waiting tables. And I've always said everyone should have to work in a restaurant before they're allowed to eat in one. Same for shopping. You should have to work in a changing room before you're allowed to try on clothes. I was working so I took an internship at a local CrossFit gym just to learn more about it and make sure this was really something I wanted to do. I was temporarily working as a waitress, and one day my husband came home, also passionate about fitness, and said, hey, why don't we open our own facility? And he said, you are nuts. I said, I know nothing about opening a business except that the people I know who do own them have such stressful lives, and there's so much to consider and so much to pay attention to and so much to do that I just don't know that I can do it. I don't know. And he said, will you just think about it? And you know what? I sat down and I organized my thoughts a little bit. Before you know it, I had a full business plan. I even had a website after a few hours. I was like, yeah, it was easy. It just flowed. And I realized that the culmination of all the experiences I had in my life brought me to a position where I could open a business. A person who, you know, not barely, but just made it through high school. And I did attend college. I didn't finish college. I would like to add that was one of my challenges sometimes in looking for new jobs. They'd say, well, where did you go to school? And I did go. So I would say I went to Point Park College in Pittsburgh, and I went to Montclair State University for many years. And they say, and what about your graduation? I said, well, about that. I had 2 classes to finish, and I really don't, you know, I feel like I should say to this forum that I regret not finishing college. I don't, but it was a lot of work just because I did it. So it is very smart to finish college. I really mean that. It kept me from getting jobs right away, where even at Bank of America, I interviewed there 5 times, and 4 different bankers wouldn't give me the chance just because I didn't finish. And one finally said, you know, you're exactly what I want, not really sure about it, but we're going to give you a chance, but only like 3 weeks to prove that you can do this. And I did it. Those 2 classes, by the way, were parenting and senior seminar. It wasn't like, you know, I didn't want to be, parenting wasn't, I'm not a parent. I kind of knew that was my life path. I just want you to know I didn't like skip really important things. I did all the important stuff. So, and senior seminar just required me to work with no pay and write a lot of papers. And at that time, I couldn't afford to do that. I want you guys to know that if you know exactly what you want to do, go for it. But to always be flexible and to be fair to yourself. If you find yourself unhappy in a position, or that you know, something that you're passionate about crosses your path, be brave enough to follow your passion. Be brave enough to jump ship and find something to make you happy. You don't have to ever feel stuck in your life, and you really can be anything and everything you want to be. Thank you.
Panelist is Dr. Gina Peter.
Thank you. I just want to thank the Women's Activism Club and Maggie and Miranda, and really to say to you guys, so you created a club, you developed it, and then you implemented it. So that's an amazing thing that you ladies did, and everyone here that belongs to that club. It's easy to join a club that's already happening, but it's much, much different to take a big step and to create something that's brand new. So, we haven't listened to the rest of the panel, but I might be the only one who did not grow up in nothing here. I'm not positive, but I kind of wish I did. All right. We're the 9. I wish I did though, because it's a lovely community. So my name is Dr. Gina Peter. I'm the co-founder and executive director of Newmark Education. And what we are is we are a state-approved private special needs school. So we have a K-8 school for elementary students. We have a high school, and we also have a teacher training institute. And so how kids come to Newmark, they all have an individualized education plan, so they're all involved with an IEP. In school districts like Nutley or Belleville or Summit, what they'll do is they realize that they might not be able to provide for the needs of these children. So they'll send them to a school like ours. And the kids that come to our school are amazing kids. They're no different than you and me. The only thing that they might need is they just might need a smaller environment to learn. They are all diagnosed with a mental health issue, so that might be anxiety, obsessive compulsive disorder, attention deficit disorder. They might have high functioning autism, but they're going to be very successful in their lives, and they just need something a little bit different. And for some kids, it's only for a short time. So how I really, got to working with these kids, and for all the high school students in the room, I just want to know how many of you always listen to your mom? Just raise your hand if you always listen to your mom. Come on, put it up. Way to go. Good job. Okay. So when I was going off to college, and I love my mother, right? I grew up with 2 sisters, wonderful parents. My mom is in her 80s, and
when my mom was growing up, you either were a nurse, a teacher, or a secretary. That was it. That was your options, right? So my mom was a secretary. So now she has 3 daughters, and we could be whatever we wanted to be. So gender was a non-issue. Maybe it was helped that I didn't have any brothers, but gender was a non-issue in our house. We all played sports. We all did everything, and I have 2 wonderful, wonderful sisters. But we could be whatever we wanted to be. So as I was going off to college, TCNJ as well, okay, it was called Trent State at the time, though. I'm a little older than you. As I was going off to college, my mother said you should be a teacher. Okay, Mom. That was about the last thing I wanted to be, because everyone told me I should be a teacher, so I wasn't gonna do that. Not because I was oppositional, just so I wanted to try new things. So I had 3 different majors in college. It was amazing that I graduated within 4 years, but I did. But I tell that because for you guys that are looking to go to college now, the stress for you, and I see it with kids, is that they feel like they need to know what they're going to do and what they're going to be. And I would never have told you at 18 that I'd certainly be here talking to you, or I would, be co-founder and director of a couple of schools and a teacher training institute. Never in a million years would I've ever said that. So the good news, and as all the other panelists have talked about, is that your experiences in life bring you to where you are. And at 18, you don't have that many experiences yet. You have a few, but you need a lot more than that. And then that will get you to where your passion is. Because at 18, I didn't know what my passion was. I knew I was passionate pretty much about everything, but I couldn't have given you any specifics on that. So as I went through college, I realized once I got out of college that I really wanted to be a teacher. Because I always worked with kids, I loved working with kids, and it was just something that I enjoyed. So of course then I had to go back to school a little bit. But while I was able to work in schools and communities, I think for all of us, when we talk about female mentors, I had female and male mentors. And I learned from people that were always doing the right thing, but I learned from people that weren't always doing the right thing. And I found that they're just as important because I needed to observe and see people not always doing the right thing to others as well. So I think that's just as important. Take every experience, good or bad, and utilize that for your purposes. And then as I went, I became a teacher, which was great, and then I really was drawn to the special needs kids. For me, it was... those kids needed a champion in their corner. So for me, that was just a great place to go. The best and the brightest should be in education. So if there's anyone out there thinking, maybe I do want to be a teacher, it's the greatest profession you could ever have. Not that your professions aren't, okay? But it really is, because you affect life every single day. So for all my students out there, your teachers affect you every day, good or bad, okay? But what we do as educators, we really want to give you an opportunity to choose something that other than what you already know. And I think that's kind of the greatest gift educators can give kids. So as we moved on and I became an assistant principal and a principal and a director, I then left the school that I was at and honestly really just thought in my head that, gosh, you know what, I can really do this better. That was my real reason with my co-director of why we founded the Newmark Schools. We just thought we could do it better, and we can make sure that kids are never starved for attention and teachers are always treated as professionals. 2 very simple reasons as to why we opened our schools. We opened our first school in 2001, and we opened our second school in 2003, and then we founded our teacher training institute probably in 2008. And what that is that we really felt that we have really great expertise in our building on how to really work with our students. And our students are in Nutley High School, they're in Nutley Middle School, they're everywhere. And sometimes they might fly under the radar in a public environment because there's just so many kids and so many people. So what we really thought that we would do is really make sure that those kids never starve for attention. So as we move forward, we opened up our teacher training institute to train public school teachers on how to work with our kids so that those kids that are staying in the public environment because they can, because it works for them, can at least still really be understood. So if you've ever been really, really nervous about something or really panicked about something and you couldn't get to a class, or you couldn't pass that test, imagine living that way every moment of every day. And that's the kind of kids that we work with, and we really try and help that. I think when Maggie and Miranda sent us some questions just to kind of prepare, one of the things they talked about is, what your job means to you. And I don't have a job. None of these ladies have a job up here. We have a career, we have a calling. And there was a quote someone had showed me. There was 3 bricklayers, and because we're a women's activism club, we're going to make it female bricklayers, okay? And the first bricklayer, they asked, so what are you doing? And she said, I'm laying bricks. The second person they asked, they said, what are you doing? I'm building a church. And then the third person they asked, what are you doing? I'm building the house of God. So that person, that third person, they have a calling. It's what they're going to do no matter where they do it, and it's not really about the brick. The second person, that they're building a church, well, they have a career. That's what they're going to do for the rest of their lives. And the first person that's just laying the bricks, you don't want to be that, okay? You really want to be somebody who has a career or a calling. And that's going to take you some time to find out what that is. But those are kind of three good examples to me about what a job is, what a career is, and what a calling is. In terms of advice or things for you guys to look to do as you're going into potentially male-dominated fields, I don't ask every parent this, but parents that I'm closer to at our school, I will ask them, because I'm very interested in gender research and theory, and I ask them, would you ask me to do that for your son or daughter if I was a man? And every time, absolutely not. The reason why I'm asking you to do things is because I'm that comfortable with you, and I'm that comfortable with our school. So for me, I use that being a female, being a woman, as a positive piece, so that not to babysit. That was a great point that you made, because I can see that, because as women, we are going to take care of people. It's what we do by nature. It's just, we can't even help it. It's just what we do. But to make sure that you find yourself in a role that is giving back to you as well as you're giving to. So I think that's really important on anything that you guys are going to choose to do, as you move on. And certainly find good mentors and good role models and good people to be around, whether that's your family. For me, it was my mother, who again was right, okay? And honestly, at 50 years old, my mother is always right, and I always knew that, but I never really wanted to tell her much then. So for you moms out there, great job for you guys, okay? But again, I want to thank you guys, and thank you ladies so much, and we're very happy to be here. Thank you.
Next is Kirsten Brannigan.
Well, unfortunately, I have to start this off with my mother now feeling that she's right all of the time. She decided to come tonight. So that doesn't bode very well. But anyway, so yes, I am not a Nutleyite. I grew up in Jersey City, and I have two sisters, and my wonderful mother is here this evening. And I'm an employment lawyer. How did I get there? Well, it was a long road, and certainly not one that I would say I knew what I was wanted to do. I would say in high school, I went to a Catholic high school in Jersey City, St. Dominic Academy, and I would say I was a solid B student, maybe B minus sometimes. I don't know. My older sister always got A's, so I figured that was the bar, and I probably wasn't going to reach that too easily. So I kind of settled in. Typical middle child syndrome, comfortable with my B's. And I think my junior year, my goal was to go to California and either be in a band or be a groupie for bands or something like that. But I wasn't a particularly good musician, so my senior year, I decided I should probably get a little bit more serious about going to college. And at that time, because I hadn't really put the effort in, I wound up going to Jersey City State College at the time, which is now New Jersey City University. And after my first year there, I felt like it was just an extension of high school, and people really didn't want to be there. And I really probably started, it wasn't until my freshman year of college that I probably started to get academically focused. And I really just wanted out of there. I wanted to go into a better university. So luckily I was able to transfer into Rutgers, which is where I finished out my college degree. And once I got to Rutgers, I was almost a straight A student. I have to say, I got 1 B plus my entire, which I was very excited about. I think I did better than my older sister. I should have gotten a couple of B's. Not that we're competitive right now. So, but I was a history and political science joint major. I had a minor in English, and probably was about my first year at Rutgers. I was sitting in a women's history class and learning about how women were oppressed for centuries and treated as property, not able to enter into contracts, pretty much considered possessions of their husbands, that a light bulb went on for me. That, of course, I have to, if I could be a woman in this day and age and learn the law of where I live, that would be the most empowering thing for me. So it's definitely cliche, but it's true, because once the light bulb went off, I just pretty much decided that that's the goal that I was going to work toward. And it was tough. I mean, it was not an easy journey to apply to get into law school, but we didn't have any lawyers in our family. I asked a lot of people, some friends in the family, what they thought about it, and everybody said, don't be a lawyer, there's too many, you're going to hate it. A lot of discouragement. I did get some positive encouragement, including from my late uncle, my mom's one of her brothers, who was probably the most educated person in our family. He had a doctorate, and he said, no matter what, even if you decide you don't like it, the education, you will never regret the education. And he was absolutely right. So off to law school I went to Rutgers in Newark, and it was definitely challenging, and I felt like everybody there was smarter than me, which of course was not the case, but certainly as a first-year law student, it's intimidating. When you get through it, if you get through the first year, you can pretty much get through anything. And it was a wonderful experience, I have to say. I started doing some internships for some judges when I was still in law school. My mom networked me into a position at the Jersey City Law Department by bragging about the fact that I was in law school. So she taught me at a very young age the power of networking. And, so I wound up doing some work for Jersey City. And then I got a second-year associate position at a large New Jersey firm down in Woodbridge, New Jersey. And I pretty much went there for my second year of law school, and then for 10 years after graduating. So those 10 years were probably some of the best and worst times of my life. Being a lawyer, working at a large firm, you have to be prepared to work a lot of hours to get trained. It's not an easy profession for men or women. Certainly the challenge of work-life balance is always there, and one that I struggled with for many years, even before I had my children. I can remember distinctly driving home from work, talking to my mother, and having her say, "Why, this is not normal. Normal people don't work like this." But when you're in the vortex of learning how to become a lawyer and working at a large firm, you need to put in the hours, you need to get trained. But the good news is once you do that, then you do have other avenues and opportunities. And for years I felt, I work at a big firm, that's what I do. And it wasn't until I had my first child, my son McGuire, who's actually a middle school student here in Nutley. And then I had my daughter, Madeline, 18 months after that, and pretty much was blindsided at how difficult it was going back to work full time and trying to meet those requirements that the firm expected of me. And I was bewildered for a good while and felt that maybe I should stop being a lawyer, maybe I should go into something else because I want to be able to see my kids grow up. I don't want to miss everything. So after quite a long struggle, I decided to take a step back. Why I decided to take the journey into the law to begin with, and came flooding back all that enthusiasm in that women's history class, and then I just decided maybe I don't have to be a lawyer at a big firm. Maybe I could do something different. So I wound up opening my own practice. I never really saw myself as a business owner. I never really thought I would have my own business. But pretty much once I decided to do it, just as Wendy was saying, you realize when you have a passion for something, it becomes easy. And everyone says, I can't believe you did that. I can't believe you took that leap of faith. But I think when you feel like there's no other option, it's easier to take that kind of a leap. And for me, the only way I was going to stay practicing law was if I felt like I had more control and had some work-life balance, and I still wanted to do the type of work that I felt passionate about, which was employment law. And that was something that I just kind of fell into. I didn't graduate law school knowing I wanted to be an employment lawyer. I pretty much dabbled in a couple of assignments at the firm that I worked at and realized I thought maybe environmental law sounded interesting, and I did a couple of those assignments and figured there was no way I could do that because it's all very dense material, and I just happened to get a few assignments working on employment law, and I loved it, and I knew it was a good fit for me, and it's definitely been something that luckily I've been able to transfer over to my own practice, the same type of work that I was doing at the big firm. I was able to continue to do when I opened my own practice. So I do both sides of the fence. I do work for employees who've been terminated or harassed or discriminated against, but I also work for employers. I do training, I do handbooks and policies and things like that, and then I also do a lot of middle of the road type work. So my intern, Marissa, is hiding back there, but Marissa can attest to all the interesting work we do on investigations. So oftentimes I'll get called in to look into a sexual harassment complaint or a race discrimination complaint, and I go in and I interview lots and lots and lots and lots of employees, right, Marissa? And then we have to summarize all the notes and really try to get to the bottom of what happened and help the company understand what happened so it can then make a decision on how to move forward and manage the situation. So that's a big part of what I do now. I'm also an arbitrator, which is cases are filed in a private forum as opposed to a court. An arbitrator will get assigned to the matter and essentially take testimony from both sides and hear, make a decision. So it's a really good balance of a type of work, and I think that, similar to Miranda and Maggie starting up this club, when I was at the brink of thinking I was going to leave the practice of law, one thing that I did that was critical, and looking back, if I hadn't done this, I don't know if I would have been able to stay in the profession and become successful in the way that I have. I looked around and realized that there were not many women joined together throughout the state. There were some bar associations that were focused on women in the law, but they really were almost on the brink of being defunct. So I started making phone calls throughout the state, and it was like that commercial of, the girl calls and she tells her friend, and then she tells her friend, and on it goes. And it was like that, and I just called anybody. If I had a female adversary on a case, I called her, and she would refer me to the next person. And we built this amazing, rebuilt this amazing organization, New Jersey Women Lawyers Association. We have over 1,000 members, and to this day, I serve on the board of directors. I was the president back during the revitalization, and it was tough. My first two kids were very little. Oh, and in the meantime, I decided to have another kid. So now I have a 4-year-old because life wasn't crazy enough, but he keeps us all laughing every day. And the New Jersey Women Lawyers Association, having that support of other women that are going through similar experiences, that would be one thing that I would strongly recommend, because nobody really prepared me for the aspect of how are you going to proceed in a profession and have a life and have kids and have family, and how hard is that really going to be? Because I think a lot of us came up through a generation where we were told that we could do anything, and when you have that mindset, you don't really think about the fact that things like that will be a struggle. So if you don't have the right partner who can help with things around the house or support you, it really becomes challenging, I think. And I've seen a lot of women drop out of the profession because they didn't have support in place and they just couldn't overcome those struggles. And it really is unfortunate, because I know when I graduated law school, about 20% or 50% of the class were women, and for years, management at law firms throughout the state of New Jersey and other states would say, well, once more women start coming through the pipeline, we're going to see the numbers of equity partnership change, and we're going to see more women that are at partnership levels and in management positions. And it really hasn't changed in the past 20 years, even though for the past 20 years, women have been coming out of law school at the rate of half the class. So there are still a lot of struggles that go well beyond anything that we've talked about here today. But as young women thinking about going into a profession like the law, I think that it's definitely worth it. It's exciting. I think it's definitely something that I would encourage any young woman who wants to study law to do. And make sure that, I think that Wendy may have said this, when you see opportunities that come your way, don't ever turn them down. I just had a recent opportunity with a law student she's not even a law student yet, she's going to law school, who had an opportunity to work at a great firm, but she only wanted to work 3 days a week, but they wanted her to work 5 days a week, so she said no. And I just thought, wow, you know, that's really not what you want to be doing. I would never have given up an opportunity like that. And so you really have to just think about, if anybody ever offers you help or says, you know what, you can call me, I can give you advice. Call them, email them, take them up on it. Don't feel like, I remember being in college and feeling like I didn't want to go up to professors and talk to them, that it would be a burden on them. And I love it when students call me and ask for advice, and I'm always willing to impart whatever wisdom I've accumulated in these past 20 years and encourage women to go down this journey, but know that they can't do it alone. They have to have support, whether it be family support, support of other women in the profession. We've developed this amazing sisterhood here in New Jersey. We really rely upon each other. We send each other business. We talk about our kids. We go through the difficult times together. And it's definitely something that I know if I hadn't had that, I don't know that I would have been able to keep trying to juggle all the balls. Because I always say, you can have it all as a woman, but you can't have it all in the same day. So some days I'm a good mom, some days I'm a good lawyer, some days I'm a good wife, usually not a good wife. Usually the mom and the lawyer can take precedence, unfortunately, for my husband. But, that's how it goes. So, it is a challenge, but it's definitely well worth it, and I would encourage anyone. I have a little bit more of a story to tell, which I'm not going to tell because I know we're on a limited time here, but I wrote about it recently, and it was basically chronicling my journey through the law and some challenges I had with my pregnancy with my daughter, and things that really kind of developed. And if anyone wants to read it, I did bring copies of the article as well as my business cards. And if anyone is interested in pursuing law in any way, I would ask that they do call me, because I wish I had somebody to call when I was in high school or even college that was a lawyer to help me out. And I do know a lot of people now. That's the one thing. I am well connected now, so I could definitely try to help in any way that I can. So thank you very much for having me.
Next panelist is Jennifer Savage.
I'm not talking, you take that away.
Hello, my name is Jennifer Savage, and thank you guys very much for the activism. That's fantastic. I thank you guys all for being here. I'm very proud to be amongst all these great women. So, I'm a pilot, and I fly for a couple. It's a corporate position, so I fly for a couple in a Falcon 7X and a Falcon 2000, and a Sovereign 680. There are four pilots, and I'm one of them. In addition, I teach the systems to one of the jets. So the Sovereign 680 is my specialty. And I work in a place, it's called CAE. And I'll teach the systems on the ground, and then we teach them in the simulator. And I'm not the FAA, but I'm an extension of the FAA in that I give these people who come to us with the highest level of license you can get, then I give them their type rating on top of that. So it's just a license to say, yes, you know this machine, this particular machine. So what led me to, I'm going to start with what led me to this career. And it really is like mowing lawns. Like we all said it, I think all of us said it. It's not, you don't know what you're going to do, and that's okay. Mowing lawns, I was a waffle maker. I was a soda jerk. I did a paper route. I worked in prisons. I was a painter. I was a landscaper. When I say I was a landscaper, I didn't do it for a ton of time. I did it long enough to know I didn't want to do it. All right, so it really is. It's a process of elimination. I could still list some more that I did. Babysitter and on and on. But what I think is important is that once I got into the field, that I felt was like, I'm happy here. I'm not sure where in aviation I want to be, but I'm happy. So I was on my way, physical therapy was another one. I was on my way to my physical therapist, well, my physical therapy guidance counselor, to go ahead and tell her what exactly classes I needed to take in order to accomplish this grad school. And I had about an hour and a half, and I passed my car, and on my car was a flyer that said you can come and take a discovery flight for $50. And I said, oh, I can do that, but I got like time, so I'm just gonna zip over there. It's only 10 minutes away. I went, took a discovery flight, I came back, I went to the guidance counselor, and I said, I'm so sorry. I'm withdrawing my Stafford loans. I'm not coming here, and I really appreciate it, but I just know that this is not what I want. And I just know I don't, and at that point, I didn't think I was going to be like, oh, I'm going to be a professional pilot, and I'm going to teach systems. No, that's not how it goes. It's just, that's not where I want to be. And so I'm going this direction. I'm taking this fly. So at that point, I started fueling aircraft because I couldn't do anything else, and I started working the desk. And then I was a certified flight instructor. Then I did aviation camps because, no, I did aviation camps first because I couldn't flight instruct. Then I did the flight instruction. Then I looked for accidents in the air. I would look for accidents and report them on the radio. Then I did banner towing. Then I did, but that's still a process of elimination. I was like, okay, I already looked at stats at banner towing. It's like, it's worse than firefighting, and I mean, as far as the risk factor, it's very high. So that was 2 days. 2 days, and I saw the risk, and I said, you know what? It's not for me. I don't want to take that risk. So I, again, take the other Y. That's not what I want to do. Then I did charter. That's where I got into charter flying jets, and went through a bunch of jets, like a handful of maybe 8 different jets, to where I am right now. I also feared having children and having family because nobody left aviation. It was very similar to what, I could hear you were just saying. It's like, oh my gosh, I've got a kid in the middle of all this too. And how many times do you hear somebody pregnant going, oh my God, you'll never know. I get loopy, I go to the bathroom, I throw up, and I'm like, I'm going to be flying a jet doing this? I didn't feel comfortable with it, and I didn't feel comfortable leaving aviation, so I started teaching as a backup. So I started teaching so I could go get pregnant and then try to come back through teaching. A backup, that's all. A backup. Let's say I lose my medical and I can't fly ever again. Well, I can still teach. I blinded an eye. I could be completely blind and still teach systems. I could, lose a leg, whatever it is. It's just keep on thinking about the options and the opportunities that are given to you, and you don't turn them down. I love that you guys took it right out of my mouth not to turn down those opportunities that are given to you, because you can always say no later, but you can't say, can you offer me that again, pretty please? That doesn't work. My advice is to go a direction. It doesn't even matter what direction you're going sometimes. I think that the fear of that when you choose something, it's just an elimination. It's no, I don't want that, no, I don't want that. It's not that you have to know exactly what is pleasing you and is your calling at the time. It's not, that happens along your road. Okay. That's one. The other thing is ask questions. Ask all the questions you can possibly ask, and that will give you guidance, because people know. People know in that, like for example, I would ask people all the time, so tell me what you like about your job. Tell me what it is, so I know if I want to go that direction. And there were specifically airliners, was one that I knew I was going to just cross off, because I only met 2. I'm 47. In 27 years, I've met 2 airliners say they like their job. They will say they love their schedule. They'll talk about the money. They'll talk about overtime. This is what's going to happen. But for me, I knew that I didn't care about the schedule or the time later. I wanted it every day, all day. I wanted to enjoy my job. It sounds like a lot like what all of you women are saying, is that this is what I live and love to do. And this is, I don't want to wait for it. I want to do it every day of my life. Therefore, it's not a job. It's a career and it's a love. And that's what you want to aim for. So the other thing is controlling your career around children. So for example, you can be smart about whatever you've chosen, So for example, the jets that I chose, I never chose jets with a fuel burn bigger or bigger than 6 hours. I knew after all my research that if I went over 6 hours, that meant I was going overseas. I knew that would send me away and not allow me to be home as frequently. So I controlled the jets that I flew, and I would only apply to those. I did not turn down a jet. I flew it for about maybe 3 months, but it was hard. It was like, you know, I now have that experience, and that's great, but at the same time, I waited for another opportunity to get out of that situation that, you know, I was just never going to be home. So that's my advice is ask as many questions as you can to the people here, all of us, and anyone who's been there before. And you're going to have to trust them to know what's best for you. Okay, people this is a tough one. Women I've looked up to. This one I started laughing myself because I wrote all these wonderful, like, women in aviation names, and I thought to myself, all right, that wasn't the question. Your question was, women you have looked up to professional and personal inspiration. All right, I couldn't come up with many women because I'm not surrounded by women in aviation. If it's personal inspiration, my grandma or my mom. My mom raised 3 girls, and I'm in the middle of 3. But, you know, that wasn't the question. You know, I can tell you my favorite quote from my grandma, but here's my point on this. We need men to look up to if we're in a male-dominated field. We need that. And there are many heroes out there. There are many people that have supported me, sometimes even looked after me when you know, somebody's trying to push you out or say, you don't want to fly with her, or even somebody saying, do not let her touch the controls. You fly and she gets ratings, but I'm the captain, right? So people like that co-pilot that closed the curtain. I flew the airplane, because it's my airplane. Not my airplane, but you know, my control of the airplane. So I flew that leg and landed, and he said, that was the most amazing flight, thank you, you know, best landing I've ever seen. And he was brave enough to tap on the shoulder and say, that was her. You know, people like that, those are my heroes. And I didn't have many to look around to for the women. I was, like, where's my list? There's, I was the first aviation camp director that was female. I was the first fueler that was female. The first CFI that was certified flight instructor that was female. There, I mean, there are many other places, but we're all distributed so far that you can't, sometimes you can't look up to those people because they're not in direct contact with you. So I thank them, and sometimes I look up and I know those people and I appreciate those people. Surround yourself with people that respect you and support you. And those are the heroes as well, I think. What does it mean to be in my profession as a woman? It's pride and self-confidence is in any job that you do. It doesn't matter whether you're a woman in a male-dominated field or not. But for me, I do. I feel special, and I don't know if you share that with me, but I feel different. I feel special when I'm in a room teaching 25 men, usually men, systems. They don't understand what I do. I feel special. And I think that's really important to change how people think. And they look at you and you've made a change in their lives forever, one by one person by one person. And the 2 things I'm going to close with is just like interesting things to explain what I mean by changing one by one is there was one, this is stuff you need to embrace, okay? One is, are you coming to? That is the one sentence that I hear all the time. I'm getting in the airplane, I say, hi, I'm Jen Savage, I'll be your captain, this is the weather, this is how long the flight is, we're going to get on, we're going to do this. I get in there and I get to the cockpit, oh, you're coming too? You know, and the reason it went over their head, they didn't realize that I had said, I'm your captain. They don't hear that. It goes right by them. And you know, and I'll have bags handed to me and all that. I'm proud of that. That's okay with me. And the reason it's okay is you embrace these things because you've made a change. They are stunned. They go, oh, yeah, of course, sure. Thanks, you know, no problem. And they back off and they watch you work. And once they watch you work, they give you that chance, you've now made a change. The other thing is my kids, I have 2 boys, 13 and 14 now, but when they were really little, I took them on their first commercial flight. They actually had been on many flights with me. We fly, I teach how to fly. One is actually really pretty good at it, even at like 4, it was bizarre. So I take them up and you want to go see the cockpit. It's so exciting. They go into the cockpit and they look around and they start kind of giggling, but that straight face. I said, what are you laughing at? And Luke, my older one, looked at my younger one, and the other one's like, don't say it. And the older one's like, I just didn't know pilots could be men. All right, so again, that's changing the new generation. That's my sons that I didn't even realize it. I said, oh my gosh. I said, you know what, kids? Men can fly just as well as women. You have to go from the other side and make sure that they know that and learn that too, and have respect for the men flying. But it's changing people's lives, and I do want to end up saying my grandmother's favorite saying, which I take to heart, is act as the person you want to become, and you are that person. And that's what I think we're all about up here, and I appreciate your time.
And last but not least, we have Jacinda Martinez, who actually came all the way from Maine. Not for us, but she's here. Thank you.
Hi everyone, and yes, I'd like to extend a thank you for having me here. Just a little background as to why I am here. My best friend from childhood, Miss Jessica Mabel, math teacher here at Nutley, and part-time, so visiting Jess and being in the great state of New Jersey. Okay. So I run a garden art and design business. It's called Grounded Local, where I work with my clients and I teach them how to grow food and flowers. So that is what I currently do, and I've been running this business for the last 2 seasons. But I'll begin with my journey, and since we're talking about high school, this is geared towards high school women and all women here. But I got to college, I had no idea what I wanted to do. I literally get to campus, and I hadn't even signed up for classes. And my RD was like, do you know why you're here? And I was like, oh, I must have missed the email. And so she sits me down, and she's like, okay, well, what's your major? I haven't decided yet. Okay. Let's just sign you up for, the core classes. Okay, so I'll take a math class, I'll take an English class. Oh, you can take an art class. I was like, oh, great, what's on the list? And basket weaving was one of them. And so I said, oh, I'll take that. So parents, one of your children wants to study basket weaving, it might actually be what brings them to their career 12 years later. So I studied underwater basket weaving as one of my classes, and I loved it so much. A little bit more about my background is that up until the age of 13, I was born and raised in Brooklyn, New York. So no gardens, no, mostly concrete. And then when I was 13, my family moved to Pennsylvania, where I met Miss Mabel. So I took this class. Again, I'm in sophomore year, still have not decided what my major is. So I decided to study abroad, because why not? So I studied abroad in England, have a fabulous time, get back to campus, decide to do a dual major, psychology and art. And my senior thesis involved going into inner city schools in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, and teaching kids how to weave baskets. So I graduated school, and to become a therapist, you have to get more schooling, get your master's, and I just felt like I am too young to give anyone therapy at 22. So I know I'll apply for a work visa abroad in England. So I moved back to England, and I work in a bank for 5 months. 5 months, 11 days paid vacation, because the Europeans love their vacations. And during those 11 days, I decided to do something called woofing, which is worldwide opportunities on organic farms. And so I took a 6-hour train ride to a stranger's home in Scotland. And this woman is an international basket weaver, and internationally known basket weaver. And what she did was she grew all her own willow, like about 12 varieties. Willow comes in all types of hues of blues and greens and yellows, reds. And she grew it, harvested it on site, freshly wove them into these gorgeous, massive baskets. and then they would go on display all over the world. And so it was in that moment where I was like, I saw this full circle cycle, and I was like, this is what I want to do. So I come back to the States, and I apply for an apprenticeship at a farm in the great state of New Jersey. I was in Blairstown for a year at a farm called Genesis Farm, and it really was so appropriate that the farm was called Genesis, because it really was the beginning of what I've been doing for the last decade. So it's a CSA farm, community-supported agriculture. I don't know if anyone has been a part of that, but basically you sign up for a farm share, and once a week, all season, you get food. Now, this really was a choice of passion and love and not finances, because how that worked was in exchange for food, a place to live, and $100 stipend a week. Or no, $100 stipend a week, 60 hours, between 50 and 60 hours work each week. I got to learn how to farm. So it was not for the money. After that year, I ended up, really being committed and saying, this is what I want to do. I love this. It's amazing. I'm on the track to be a farmer. So I ended up moving to the state of Maine because I wanted to farm sheep. And I get there, and that's really where things started to evolve and change. My first year farming at Genesis, I didn't do a lot of tractor work. I really just weeded, did simple things. When I got to Maine, now I'm operating massive tractors. I can change any implement. That's what's on the back of the tractor, whether you're tilling, mowing, seeding. So I learned a lot of technical stuff about farming. And farming is considered, it is a male-dominated industry, but there are a lot more good female farmers than ever before. It's just the look of a farmer when you see one is like an old man with a beard. And I mean, so when I tell people, oh, what do you do? I'm like, I'm a farmer. And they're like, no, you're not. And somewhere in the conversation, it would get woven, oh, so you garden, like that garden. Yeah, I farm. And so I always made it a point to say that, because it was like, sometimes it would make them feel really uncomfortable. It's like, oh, it's the same thing. I'm like, no, it's not the same thing. It's actually farming. If I was a man standing here, you would never say, oh, you garden. You'd say, you're a farmer, right? So I spent 3 years apprenticing and learning everything I could about farming. And then I had this amazing opportunity to run a 4-acre farm for a restaurant in Maine called Primo. The chef there, Melissa Kelly, she's a 2-time James Beard Award winner. And the whole premise of the restaurant is that 80% of the produce, 100% of all the chicken grown there was grown right outside. Or everything eaten there was grown right outside. So when you go to eat at the restaurant, you can walk around the farm and see where your food's grown. And so that's really where I was, done apprenticing. Now I'm running someone's farm. And after 3 years of doing that, I was like, I'm going to do this on my own. And so I love plants. I love people. My first year farming, I used to joke that I want to be a traveling farmer. And so essentially what I've done is I've built this business where I'm hired by people, clients, to teach them how to grow food and flowers, like having a mini farm. And so I have 2 pieces of advice. If you don't know what you're doing, if you're undecided about your major or your profession in college, study abroad. It really changed my life. I had never really been out of the country. I'd never been out of the country up until that point. And so it made me get a lot of perspective just on the bigger picture, bigger world. And also, you can be in a profession like I have. I've been in the same profession, different aspects of it. Just look at the bigger picture of what you're doing. So there are so many different outlets for you to do. So whatever you decide, it's like I, worked for nothing on farms. I got paid really well to manage someone's farm, and now I'm running my own little mini farms. So I've just been climbing the rung of gardening, growing, farming very slowly. And yes, now I'm a gardener. I let people call me a gardener, so that's not a big deal. But so finally to wrap up, I run a business. I'm currently looking to do an online MBA, get my master's in business because, you know, when you run a small business, there's so much numbers you have to know. And I'm glad my best friend's a math teacher, so it helps. So I went from basket weaving to starting to think about getting my MBA. Not so many twists and turns, kind of the same direction, but again, if you asked me in high school, would you know how to drive a tractor? I'd probably be like, what are you talking about? So yeah, just if you really love something, maybe it doesn't pay very well in the beginning, but in the end, you know, work hard for those big numbers, okay?
Thank you to all of our panelists for coming out tonight and for, you know, imparting your wisdom on the people in this room and just enlightening everyone about what you do. Next we have 50-50. So if you have your tickets, Elena and Maya are going to bring the tickets over. So the prize is a $50 Chipotle gift card donated by my mom last year, sort of a leftover thing. But
62.
Wow.
I know.
Congratulations. Now we're just going to open the panel up to a Q&A. So if anyone has any specific questions for any one of our panelists, or just a general question, just raise your hand, and I think Mr. Materi and Mr. Williams are handling the microphone situation.
I don't believe you.
Any questions?
No, I just, Jen, you kind of got my attention when you said in the airplane you recorded accidents in the sky. Is that a crash? What's an accident?
Oh, no, like, yes, that's what I had to know. When I would be in the airplane and I'd fly around and look for accidents on the ground. And then report it on the radio, car accidents on the ground. I report them on the radio.
I'm worried, okay.
Just a general question for the panel. Just sitting here listening to you wonderful women, what came across, the consistency was the grit and determination. In fact, it's kind of an indefinable factor. It's what I'm trying to push as a building principal of all my students, male, female, whatever. Could you talk a little bit more about that? If you, anybody, this is open to anybody, what you think, you know, is that something that as a society we need to get better at? Or is that something you think is innate? Or is that something that you can maybe coach up on something? Does that make sense? Grit and determination?
Well, I think especially now in a society where a lot of people spend time communicating on their phones and you kind of lose track of what it's like to talk to people. I've seen my friends' teenage daughters together in a room, standing around a table, and all of them are just, they're not even talking. They're talking to each other, but they're not. They're on so, being brave and having determination is extremely important in any career. You have to just put yourself out there. And, you know, me especially, having said that, I didn't finish college. I heard a lot of no's before I heard a yes. And, you know, I did also learn that in my performance career, you know, going on auditions and stuff. You hear no a lot before you get a yes. And unless you just keep going and believe in yourself and know that you will eventually hear yes, determination is extremely important. You just can't give up just because someone thinks you can't. You have to believe that you can. Like your grandma said, you know, you believe that you are that person and you will become that person.
Anyone else want to add to that? Oh, there's a question. I guess for me, being in the kind of engineering field, I think, going back to your question about determination, where it comes from, I think for me, being an engineer, I always had a scapegoat because being a girl, like it wasn't expected I was going to do well. So I think having the determination was, you know, when you say, oh, I'm an engineer, people are like, oh, wow, you know. But when a guy says they're an engineer, it's like, oh, cool. So when, like, a hard test comes or, you know, you don't get a good grade, it's easy for girls to be like, nah, well, I'll just do something easier because no one really knew, you know, no one really expects you to do well. You kind of have that scapegoat of, well, you know, it wasn't really expected that I was going to do well. So I think changing people's mindset of not being so surprised that you own a business or so surprised that you're in technology or, you know, those little comments of good for you, you know, it's like you don't say that to a guy. So don't, you know, like that little bit of wow, that's so surprising that you do that. That kind of puts you in a place that when you're struggling, it's like, oh, I can't do this. Like people, you know. So I think that's my thing about changing determination in people.
What advice would you give to like a sophomore girl right now who's doubting herself, or maybe good at math and doesn't want to, because the societal norm is saying no, girls don't do that. Because I find that very frustrating. If you have that age.
I think I would say, you know, picture yourself in 5 years, and are you going to be, you know, mad at are you going to kick yourself for, you know, doing a pushed off, you know, hitting the enter button or staring at an Excel sheet which is fine, whoever stares at an Excel sheet every day. But like whatever your passion is, are you going to regret it 5 years down the road that you're doing something that you don't really enjoy?
I wanted to actually say that this was the most interesting discussion by everyone. I was taken, I was charmed, I was interested, but I think I'd really like to ask the organizers how you knew that all these women would be so fascinating and interesting.
Yeah, there's one there.
I'm really close to this. But, I mean, most of the women, I think we compiled a joint list of women in our lives who we knew had really interesting jobs. And Justin actually came to me, like, totally on accident when I was having a conversation with Miss Mabel, who's my tutor. But, yeah, all these women, for the most part, like, we know personally really well. And we understand the kind of people they are and the kind of work ethic that they present and bring to their careers. So, yeah, it's a personal thing.
Yeah, same. I basically just asked my mom who are some accomplished women, as she is one too, but I know Wendy and Kirsten, and I know they're both charismatic and smart people, and I think those are good qualities to bring to something like this.
Any other questions?
I have a question for Samantha. Why middle school, so many girls doubt themselves and think, oh, I'm not good at math. Even if they are, and there are a lot of smart girls who are like, that's not my thing. Is there anything that specifically someone told you, or you had a mentor, or what kept you involved in math when so many girls stray from it at such a young age?
Not gonna lie, I got a C in calculus in college. Sorry, Mom. I got better grades in physics and chem and everything like that. So I think, you know, working hard, like, yeah, you have to be good at math in some retrospect, but studying and putting in the time and kind of seeing your end goal, like, I'm not the best at math. My job is math, but I kind of have studied so much and learned physics and learned chem. You know, it is a language, like it all ties into each other. So if you know physics, if you know chem, like you're gonna be good at the practical math. So book smart, I got a C in calculus in college, and I still passed. Like it's just something that you might not be good at, but as far as engineering, you don't have to be amazing at math or amazing at this. You just have to be good at one certain thing. So yeah, C's get degrees.
You can learn to be good at something. I was horrible at electrics, always. Electronics, so basically, every time I teach a system, I know that's my weakness. When you go through the self-check on every type rating I ever got in every airplane, I know I am horrible at electric. So what happens is I ask 106 questions about electrics, I'm blue in the face, and you know it. It doesn't mean you can't do it because that's your weakness. It means you have to work harder at that particular weakness. So, you getting a C, and being an engineer, and me being a pilot, and still being able to teach electric to the people that I need to teach it to. And actually, people are like, oh, that's your strength. And I'm like, no, it's not. Yeah. You don't even know. It is not my strength. So you can learn what you need to know once you find that career.
My name is Mrs. DeVore. I'm the vice principal here in the high school. And Wendy, you had mentioned something that caught my attention. And then Jennifer, you kind of backed it up. Wendy, you mentioned that along your journey, you had most confrontation or challenges from stronger women that you were had to work along with. And then Jennifer, you said because you were mainly in a male-dominated field, that you had to find men as your inspiration. And I just kind of wanted to focus on that. Like, why do you think women in these types of positions do challenge other strong women when we are fighting ourselves to establish our own position? Why do you think that women do that to each other? And I liked your advice as learning from it and stepping back. But I think as a powerful woman, it's in our nature to almost fight back, to stand up against the challenge and push back when pushed. So how do you productively and successfully respond to those challenges?
Well, the first time that happened to me, I did not productively respond to that. It was in commercial real estate, and my boss, who was my mentor, who I really, followed in her footsteps as much as I could. The bank burned down in the building, and I was technically supposed to be on vacation. And while I was away, she sort of was almost sabotaging my job, and it was because I was advancing and getting much closer to taking hers over. And immediately when I found out, I gave up my vacation and I came to work every day, and I started to catch things through my paperwork, and things were missing, and things that I knew I took care of things were missing, and I sort of caught this happen, and I called her out on it. And, she was much older and much more experienced than me in this field, and she pretty much taught me everything I knew. But because of that, I also I saw what she was doing, and I did go over her head to our boss, and I spoke to him about it. And she was relocated in the company for a new position, and it sort of made me realize, like, wow, she was powerful enough to maybe make me lose my job, and just my words, almost made her lose hers. In fact, she got demoted because of what she had done. And I regretted doing that because I realized that she was kind of just fighting for her way, and I didn't want those things to happen to her by calling her out on it, but I needed to defend myself. And in future situations when I was challenged, or maybe someone went over my head to prove that they were better than me at my job or something, I don't want to say like I just bowed down to it, but I learned my lesson that, as much as that maybe hurt me on the short term, sometimes fighting back could hurt that person in the long term. And there's a time to be quiet in your field, and it's not always about being better than the other woman or fighting for a new position, but by taking that back seat sometimes and letting that person shine because they need to, you don't really know why they need to do that. And it's a really complicated question. Every instance is its own. And it's unfortunate because a lot of times that when you have to complain about a coworker or talk about a coworker, you have to talk about it to another man. And then it kind of makes you look like you're just complaining. And that's a lot of the response I've always had as a younger woman in an older man's industry is, oh, she's whining again, she's complaining again. And it's not what you're doing. But because you're a woman, a lot of times people think that, right? It's hard to put into words to answer that question if there's a time. Oh, you have to get there.
Sorry.
Come on over.
I find that my experience with women in the law, a lot of times it's generational. So for the women that I had male and female mentors to some extent, but I found that the women that came the generation before our generation, Generation X, I think that they felt that they had to fight and claw their way to get a seat at the table, and they really didn't want to be judged differently from their peers at all or stand out in any way. I know that for me personally, I got some discouragement from women of that generation on even joining or trying to revitalize the Lawyers Association, along the same lines of, oh, women are just going to sit around and whine and just suck it up and do it like the guys do it, and and sort of they didn't always reach back and try to help the generation behind them, because I think they were, in my experience, somewhat resentful of the fact that our generation came out of law school and said, yes, we want to have careers, but we also want to have families. And it was almost like, well, how are you going to do this? Or if you want to have a family, then don't complain you're not a partner. Why should you want to be a part-time partner? That's crazy. So in the law, anyway, I found that there was a conflict along generational lines, where I think that our generation is much more supportive of the next generations that have come to help them try to figure out ways and definitely reach back and support and help them. But I do know that there are some women who did help and mentor, but I found that many of them sort of just said, look, we did it this way, you should do it this way, and, pretty much didn't want to hear it yet. They didn't want to hear about, work-life balance or anything. And if you did want work-life balance, that's fine, but then don't expect to become partner, as opposed to, well, why can't I have work-life balance? And if I'm an excellent attorney, why can't I be on a partnership track too? Well, I wasn't. Okay, well, so let's make some progress then. But I think there's a level of resentment, to have somebody take a path different from the way that they went.
That they paved our way to make it a little easy. They kind of paved our way, and when they see us coming into their positions a little bit easier than it was for them, it did create a little bit of resentment. They wanted it not to be as easy for us. It's not easy, but easier than it was for them. So, generational for sure.
I want to add to that. When I was farming, all of my bosses were men. Really lovely people. One of them is still a mentor to me to this day. So when I got to the restaurant, the farm to table experience, my boss was a woman. And I was just so stoked. I was like, oh yes, I'm gonna, we weren't in the same profession obviously, but she was still my boss. And she was not a female mentor type at all. Actually, the opposite. And I respect her, she's amazing, she does amazing work, but she just wasn't a woman to woman type of mentor. And I'm sure we've all come across those where it's cutthroat and there's a lot of competition. But I worked there for 3 years. My third year I read Sheryl Sandberg's book, In it she talks about an experience she had where she has a female boss and was so devastated, not by the fact that this woman didn't want to mentor her, by the fact that she was holding her to this extra level of accountability. So her point was that, I don't hold men to that level. I don't resent men when they don't want to mentor me. Her expectation was this woman was going to be my mentor because we're women. And so I'm sort of just adding it to say that, not every woman is a woman-to-woman kind of mentor person. And if they're not, they had to work this hard to get where they are. and you know, they have so much on their plate already that if it's not the case, it shouldn't make you feel any less. It actually should motivate you to be the type of person who wants to mentor other women, if that's how you feel is appropriate. Does that make sense? Yeah. Okay.
My question is, I'm a teacher here, I'm a math teacher, and I see some other teachers, and we work with these young women, and we would like to motivate them. So is there anything a teacher had done for you that motivated you, or something you wish a teacher would have done to help motivate them, or motivate you guys? Story.
So I think that, one thing though, I must say though, after all your experiences, in education, I've found it to be, women are wonderful to each other. So I've never experienced that in my 25 plus years in education. Men and women in general, we're very supportive, whatever that you may need. And it could just be that we just have a diverse population depending on what age group. But I've worked K to 12, so I've not had a similar experience. But I think with that, I think you just as a role model, that there's that there's nothing a girl can't do. So I think we find women tend to be, especially when they're in classes with boys, you're a co-ed high school here, you tend to find that the girls will take a back seat to that. Except for not Maggie or Miranda, but for other girls. So I think it's really to try and elevate them, because they will let the boys, because boys tend to be a little louder, a little funnier, all those other things, and people get drawn to that. There's a tremendous amount of research in a positive way, that are single-sex high schools, colleges, that women really shine. So I think it's our job as women to set the girls up in situations that help them shine too, so they don't get to take a back seat.
I also think it's important to, when you do come across a woman that you are butting heads with, which is very rare for me because I hardly came across that, is to reach out and give them that, what you are proud of them for, you should appreciate that and show them that. That opens your heart, which opens their heart, which encourages a heck of a lot more positivity and bonding than, even though you want to do it through your teeth, sometimes if you just look at them at a different angle and say, okay, this woman is 20 years older than I am. I just came in, and this was actually 4 years ago. Out of all the 27 years I've lived, it was the first time I came across another woman, senior to me, and all of a sudden, I'm taking her thunder in a way. I'm the other woman. And for me to say, like you were saying, it's like she paved the way before I did. And all of a sudden, I'm coming in, and now I'm teaching, and I'm doing this. And I feel like once you break that down, just the first two compliments, if you can look around the other way and go, you really did an amazing job on this, and ask them questions about where your weaknesses are. Show your heart, they show theirs, and it really doesn't break it down, I think, very easily, very quickly.
If I could just go back to that issue about the teachers, and I know there's teachers in this room, I don't think any teacher should ever underestimate his or her ability to change a young person's life. Because it only takes one gesture sometimes to really make a difference to a student and change their life. I had a teacher, I was in 9th grade, having a little bit of fun and being a typical 9th grader, not caring so much about school. In this school, I had a teacher, an English teacher named Marie Procopo. I've told this story since forever. She was a Douglas College grad. She was an English teacher. The minute I met her, the impact that she had on me, I was going nowhere but Douglas College, and I wanted to be an English teacher just like her. She changed my entire path, my entire life. My point is, I really do see, and in my line of work now with a lot of troubled, there are a lot of troubled young people, a teacher can change a whole student's entire life just with certain gestures. So you should never underestimate the incredible power that you have as a teacher to do that. I I just wanted to raise this question to the young women in the room, and maybe, Virginia, you might have something to say about this. I am finding in my line of work something that's really disturbing me, and that is an increase of anxiety among young women, to the point where I've seen young women, high school students, who are not able to go to school because their anxiety level is so high. It's really troubling to me. And there's some young men too as well, but I see it mostly in young women, and the more I think about it, I sometimes suspect that social media has something to do with all this, maybe all the evils, but there's something going on that is really troubling to me, and I'm just wondering if you, as young women and young students, see that amongst any of your friends, or have any idea what that's about, where that's coming from. It's disturbing.
Well, I see a lot of stress culture in high school, and students encouraging other students to be stressed out about things that don't necessarily require stress or anxiety, and I think that's been like just snowballing, and it's becoming more and more present in high school especially.
When you think about high school, they're probably shooting the best years of your life and having fun, have friends. You might be athletic, you might sing, you might be in a band. They're great, great years. But I'm seeing so many really now stressed out kids that it's sad. Really, it's sad.
Like, I know personally, I have trouble with anxiety. It's something that I've seen a doctor about, and it's this feeling of you have to be the best at everything in every aspect of your life, whether it's like straight up classes or extracurriculars. Like, you have to be the most involved, because if you're not going to get that scholarship, and you're not going to go to that college, and then you're not going to get that job you want. So it's a lot of the pressure to think forward, but in a way that sort of debilitates you and prevents you from, living your life in the moment and stress-free. But I think there needs to be a lot more openness when it comes to that. And I know a lot of my teachers encourage, like, don't stress, but you get a lot from your peers who are encouraging you, but at the same time, can kind of bring you down sometimes, like Miranda said, like stressing you out over things you may not be normally stressed about, because everything feels like a competition, and it stays.
Do you think some of that comes from social media, because the fact that social media has created a generation of young people who portray the good side only? If you look at social media and what a Facebook page might show you, it's only the good, only the best. I'm going out all the time. I look pretty all the time. I have lots of friends. Look at me. I mean, do you think that any of that pressure comes from social media?
Not for me personally, but I know for a fact that I have friends, and I know people personally that struggle with that aspect that can come from social media.
If I could just add to that, so 1 in 4 adults are diagnosed with anxiety, clinically diagnosed with an anxiety disorder. So our country is overly anxious, okay? So social media and having to be on your phone, if I just so I'm on my phone a lot, all right? And I'm not on Facebook, but I'm just at work, I put my phone away. I don't go on it, because I'm in my school building, and that's who needs me right at that time. And if anyone else needed me, they'll call on the phone. The difference I feel without being on the phone is unbelievable. Like, you're just that much calmer. You're not distracted. So when you're distracted, you get more anxious. So I want to actually be a farmer. That's really what I want to do. Right? But with that being said, it's not okay anymore in this world to be average. You're not okay to be average. So if you're a kid in school and you're a C student, that's average. That's pretty good if you ask me, but it's not okay. I mean, she's an engineer, she's average in calculus. So, but think, right? Just one. But if you think about it, it's not okay just to be average anymore. And so when we were growing up, it's okay to be average. You didn't compare and compete the way kids compare and compete these days. So I think that adds to the stress of kids growing up now. It's just a different world.
All right, I'm sorry, but we were super over time, and I just really want to thank everyone for coming out tonight.
Can I just make one quick plug?
Yes.
I'm participating in the internship program here at the high school. My office is on Franklin Avenue. My intern, Marissa, is here. And if anyone is interested in being an intern, I would imagine that the program hopefully is going to grow to include even more businesses here in town. And if anyone's interested, they can feel free to track Marissa down and she can give her honest feedback without me there. She says she loves it, but, you know. No pressure, no pressure. But anyway, I just wanted to let people know that if anyone's interested in that for the coming years. Thank you.
So thank you all so much for coming. Thank you to all of our wonderful panelists. And I hope that everyone has gotten something out of the evening, and whether it's some sort of new inspiration or perspective or direction. Thank you.